Okay, look, I shouldn't have to do a video like this. And this is pertaining to an exchange I had with somebody online in like a horror community kind of thing. And this is a very archaic way, a very, very archaic viewpoint on the horror genre. That horror films that are rated PG-13 have no possibility whatsoever of being effective or frightening or what have you. And I see that a lot of people still look at the horror genre like that. PG-13 horror, there's never been a good PG-13 horror film. And PG-13 automatically means watered down, not effective, not scary. No gore means no horror. When I don't think that gore is I personally don't view gore as a very essential point of horror. I don't think it's very essential to constitute a good horror film. But I actually have a good little stack of PG-13 horror films that are actually quite good that I'm going to show you to kind of back my claim a little bit that not every PG-13 horror film. I mean, I think to sit and say that a PG-13 horror film sucks because it's PG-13 and it's for teeny bopper kiddies is complete and utter bullshit. You can't just base every PG-13 horror film off of shit like Slender Man or off of shit like Bye Bye Man or Wish Upon. Those are garbage, okay? I'm sorry, those are garbage. Yes, they're PG-13 horror films and they're garbage, but that doesn't stand for every PG-13 horror film ever. Just because a horror film is PG-13 doesn't mean that it can't be scary or effective at what it does. And I want to go ahead and say that I'm not going to be showing off Insidious or Drag Me to Hell because those movies are, obvious. Those are two obvious great PG-13 horror films that even these fucking dimwits, I guess these people have never seen Drag Me to Hell or Insidious, but I actually thought Insidious was rated R for the longest time because of how frightening it was. But let me show you some good PG-13 horror films. We actually got a film starring Jennifer Connelly. We have Dark Water. And this serves to me really as an effective, almost like a Hitchcockian ghost story. And it's PG-13. And it's got pretty frightening stuff in this movie, to me personally. And I think that this is actually Jennifer Connelly's one of her better movies. And I've actually liked most of her older work. Some of her newer stuff, but her older work I really like. And like I said, this serves, if you've not seen Dark Water, this serves as a good Hitchcockian ghost story kind of thing. It's not like on the level of anything Alfred Hitchcock, but it's in that vein. And I think it's an effective PG-13 horror film. Why don't we look at a dumb, stupid shark movie that's a lot of fun, that actually has grown on me with time. I actually used to hate this movie, but with time, it's grown on me a little bit. That's 47 Meters Down. Shark movie. PG-13 horror. It's not scary or effective or anything, but it's a lot of fun. This movie is definitely fun. And I can see people hating it. I used to be one of those people. Upon rewatch, I actually have learned to enjoy this movie a little bit more. There are moments that feel a little boring, a little drawn out. But as a PG-13 horror film, this is definitely not one of the great PG-13 horror films. But this is definitely one to throw on and have a good time with. So yeah, that's 47 Meters Down. Now here's a better shark movie, in my opinion, The Shallows. This movie is actually pretty good, in my opinion. The Shallows is definitely one of the better PG-13 horror films, and definitely one of the better shark films. The shark in this fucking movie is terrifying. And I love this movie. I don't think it's up to the quality of like Jaws or anything like that. I think it rivals. I know Orca is not a shark movie, it's a killer whale movie, and it was more of a Jaws ripoff, but I enjoyed it. It rivals that. I don't count stuff like Deep Blue Sea or anything like that because that movie to me was garbage. I never liked Deep Blue Sea. This to me is much better than Deep Blue Sea. Like I said, I've always found Deep Blue Sea to be garbage. That's just my opinion. I have a lot of problems with Deep Blue Sea that I think that people don't talk about. But for a PG-13 horror film, this movie's got quite a bit of blood in it as well. It's pretty good. The Shallows is pretty good. All right, another creature feature. One that I think is actually really underrated, but I am seeing a lot more appreciation for this movie, The Cave. This is just another dumb, fun creature feature that's PG-13. Yeah, it pulls on the blood and gore and whatnot, but it's still a really fun, nostalgic movie for a lot of people. And I think that, like I said, The Cave is definitely worth a watch. It's got like a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that this movie's a lot better than that. It's just definitely a really fun creature feature with a lot of interesting creatures in it. A lot of fun. All right, here's a film that I think is genuinely great. Dark Skies. This has been one of the most effective PG-13 horror films I have ever seen. This movie actually gets a lot of shit. I really don't understand it. This movie's grim for a PG-13 movie. I think this movie is a genuinely scary film. I think that it's not quite as good as, say, Signs or something like that. Even though Signs, to me, is more of a thriller than a horror film. This is a straight-up horror film. And this is a very effective one. It's got amazing Halloween-esque atmosphere. And when I say atmosphere, I mean like Halloween has a lot of atmosphere. And this movie, kind of like Halloween a little bit, has really good atmosphere. That makes this a great horror film, in my opinion. It does have some flaws. It does, like I said, it does have some things that are a little but overall, a very, very good PG-13 horror film that's fucking dark as shit. Alright, here's an unpopular one. This is one that I actually enjoyed in theaters. I actually didn't see this in theaters. I saw it at the drive-in because they were showing Oblivion with Tom Cruise and this film. But this is one that I've always enjoyed a little bit that a lot of people don't like. Mama. I've always enjoyed this movie. I don't think it's great. I definitely think there are better horror films out here. But it does have some cool stuff in it. I definitely have, every time I've sat down and watched this movie, I like Jessica Chastain as an actress quite a bit. And I don't know, I've always gravitated towards this movie a lot. It's just been a very fun horror movie to me. But yeah, I'm probably in the minority that enjoys Mama. Here's definitely an underrated one that I actually technically used to hate for a while because I had it mixed up for another movie called The Unborn. But when I finally got the two movies switched around, I realized I actually liked this movie. I've just been calling this movie the wrong thing for the longest time. And that's actually The Uninvited, which I actually am planning on watching again this weekend. This is a fucking really good PG-13 horror film that I think gets not overlooked. This movie gets a lot of shit. All kinds of horror communities I've been in say that this is just a no good PG-13 horror film. When I think that that's far from the truth. This is a really effective horror film. To me, this movie's kind of a 2000s classic. I used to find this thing playing on TV all the time, and I don't know. It's just a really good horror film, in my opinion. PG-13 one, obviously. Alright. When I see that people say that PG-13 horror sucks, they've obviously never heard of this movie. 1408. Like I said, the kind of like Dark Water. I think this movie's definitely a little better than Dark Water, as far as like a Hitchcockian ghost story. Almost. I definitely believe that this is probably in the top 3 greatest PG-13 horror films of all time. You've got John Cusack and you've got Samuel Jackson. This is a fucking amazing film. And this is one of... I don't see this movie ever get talked about a lot, but I think everybody should, if you're a horror fan and you want a good PG-13 horror film, watch this fucking thing. Not going to spoil any movies in this video, but yeah. If I've not, I've probably proved my point enough, but I'm just going to go ahead and keep proving it because I'm sick to death of seeing this fucking argument. All right, we've got both white noise films. This one's definitely better than this one, but this one's actually pretty good too. This one you've got Michael Keaton, and then you've got Nathan Fillion from, he's in a lot of stuff. To me, he's always that one lieutenant from Saving Private Ryan, the one that survived the plane crash, and you probably recognize him if you go back and watch Saving Private Ryan. He also got Katie Sackhoff from, you probably, most horror fans will probably know her as that really obnoxious girl on Halloween Resurrection who gets her head cut off with a butcher knife somehow. That I don't see how that works. But these are actually both good. Like I said, this is the superior film to this one. But this one's actually worth a watch too. White Noise, I've actually read where White Noise is not considered a horror film. To me, White Noise is horror. It's like a horror thriller. And thriller, there's some elements of thrillers that are still horror to me. Like Silence of the Lambs, there's enough horror in Silence of the Lambs for me to call it a horror film. But, yeah, these are kind of the same deal. There's enough horror in here to call these horror films, and they're both really good. It's nice to see Nathan Fillion, because I was quite a fan of Saving Private Ryan as well. As you all know, that's my favorite movie of all time. Alright, I think this is one where M. Night Shyamalan kind of redeemed himself for me, because he made great films for a while, and then, I don't know, Last Airbender happened, and After Earth happened, and Happening happened, and it just, his career kind of took a nosedive. And we've got The Visit. This is a fucking riveting horror film for a PG-13 horror movie. This movie fucking had me at the edge of my seat when I went to go see this in theaters. I'm not kidding you. I was so impressed with this movie when I first saw it. And it genuinely got me thinking a little while after the film. It's a very, very effective psychological horror film. And it's PG-13. Imagine that. PG-13 horror films that are actually good. Alright, I had to make a jump cut there. My dogs were barking. I don't know what they were barking at. Alright, I think personally that this is the greatest PG-13 horror film ever made. The Others, with Nicole Kidman. And, wow. This movie, to me, was scary, and it has an amazing plot twist. So like I said, this has got to be the greatest PG-13 horror film of all time. In my personal opinion, maybe Insidious is your favorite PG-13 horror film of all time. To me, The Others is just, there's no other PG-13 horror film that is as great as The Others. Of course, I said this, and somebody said that I said it was the greatest horror film of all time, when I clearly said that this is the greatest PG-13 horror film of all time. But yes, The Others is brilliant. Alright, I actually enjoyed both these movies. I've actually enjoyed all three of these movies in the franchise. That's Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane. They're very, very different films. And I don't believe that Matt Reeves directed this one. He directed this one, but I don't think he directed the second one. A lot of people don't like the first film, but they do like the second one. I actually prefer the first one, but the second one is a damn good follow-up to this. I think this one's actually more of a prequel. I'm not sure. But, and I even enjoyed Cloverfield Paradox. A lot of people didn't. I did. They're very, very effective monster movies. This one's more of your straight-up found-footage monster movie, whereas this one is more of a psychological, like, it's not as much about the monsters as it is the people in this movie are more of the monsters than the actual monsters. It's a very, very effective horror film, and so is this one. But, yeah, like Cloverfield, all three films. Alright, this one's kind of a guilty pleasure. The Ring is not going to be on this because I hate the American version of The Ring. I think it's horrible, but I did like the Japanese version And I like the Japanese version of this film as well, but I don't own it. I only own the American one. And the American one is PG-13, and it's actually quite fun, quite good too. The Grudge. Like I said, it's not as good as the Japanese version. But this one I've always enjoyed quite a bit. And I don't know, this one has a special place in my heart. I actually like The Grudge 2 and The Grudge 3. Those are very, very hated horror films in the horror community, but I enjoyed them both, as well as the original Grudge film from Japan. But this one, as a PG-13 horror film, and it serves as a good remake to The Grudge. It's definitely tried to appeal to a wider audience, hence the PG-13 rating. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed this one. I still enjoyed the original better, but... Alright, here's an unpopular one, and I still prefer the original to this as well. But this serves as a fun remake, When a Stranger Calls. This is a really hated remake. Really, really, really hated remake. And I think it's kind of suspenseful, actually. I think there's a lot of suspense in this movie that I don't think it gets credit for. I don't know. I've just When a Stranger Calls, the remake, it's pretty fun to me. I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit. Alright, so we've got the remake of The Stepfather. The original was rated R, but the remake was rated PG-13. This is actually the unrated cut, but theatrically this film released as a PG-13 film. And I think that this movie actually is a little bit better than the original film, personally. I did like the original film quite a bit. I did like the sequel, the second one. I didn't see the third one. But the remake is really good. I actually really like Dylan Walsh as an actor, and he's pretty damn good in this movie. He's a very chilling psychopath. Like I said, this is the unrated cut. But like I said, this movie did theatrically release as a PG-13 horror film. Alright, last but not least, we have The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And I think this is probably the second greatest PG-13 horror film of all time, because this is a very uniquely done film. And it's fucking scary as shit. This movie plays on my mind psychologically, and I think this is definitely one of the greatest PG-13 rated horror films ever created, behind the others. This might even be the greatest PG-13 horror film of all time. I don't know. This if you ask me on a Monday, it's the others. If you ask me on Tuesday, it's this. But yeah, that's just to go to show you that PG-13 horror movies can actually be good. Not every PG-13 horror film is the Bye Bye Man or the Slender Man or the fucking whatever. Like I said, a lot of these shitty PG-13 horror films are giving horror a bad rep, putting people under this notion that if a horror movie is PG-13 rated, then it's by default bad. When I just proved with like 20 fucking movies that that's not the case. There are effective PG-13 horror films that actually don't get a lot of love. Like I showed you, Dark Water didn't get a lot of love. Mama, I think, is actually pretty fun, pretty good, that a lot of people hate. I'm just here to tell you, PG-13 horror films don't always suck. You don't always need blood and gore to make a good, true horror film. So that's just my personal opinion. What do you guys think about PG-13 horror? Do you think it's dumb? Do you think all horror films should be rated R? What do you think? Do you think blood, guts, and gore make a horror film, or do you think a more psychological approach makes a horror film? That's completely up to you. I would have actually showed the second Ouija, but I hated the first Ouija. I don't know why that would have affected me showing the second Ouija. Probably because I don't own the second Ouija or the first one. But, yeah, Ouija 2 is definitely one I should have definitely mentioned, even though I don't own it. But, yeah, that's just, like I said, my opinion. Hope you guys liked the video. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Peace.